Sad scenes indeed. We want to bring you up now, up to date on what's been going on, all of the recent developments. The rescuers in New York, of course, continuing to search the rubble of the World Trade Center. They're hoping against hope that they will find further survivors. More than 4,900 people now officially listed as missing there in New York. A Justice Department official, meantime, telling CNN a second man is in custody on a material witness warrant. He's in FBI custody in New York City, and New Jersey officials are questioning 2 other men in connection with the attacks. Sources say 2 of the hijackers were under surveillance by U.S. law enforcement before the attack. One of the 2 was reportedly connected to the October 2000 attack on the USS Cole in Yemen. Meantime, in New York, investigators found a passport that apparently belonged to one of the hijackers. It was found blocks away from the crash site itself. The FBI and the police have now widened the search area after that discovery.
Should the United States elect to launch an offensive against Afghanistan, it faces a daunting task. The terrain is mountainous, and the people are renowned for their resilience to ground assaults. The country is far removed from most U.S. allies. Former diplomats say the U.S. must weigh its options very carefully.
I think that would be, under most circumstances, the last thing we would want to do. Putting land forces into some place like Afghanistan, in the first place, we saw how successful the Soviet Union was. If you get all of the Afghanis opposed to you, it can be a very unpleasant circumstance. I would think that with our technology, if we know where he is, and that's the first question, I should think we could get at him and at the Taliban without having to put troops on the ground.
You have air power, which is very capable. It's going to be mixed with a variety of other kinds of actions, and I cross the spectrum of economic sanctions, embargoes, forming alliances that will act in concert against these countries, and as well as military action. So it's going to be long range. It's going to be very, very complicated. I think you'll find that the military activities that occur are going to be selective. They'll be very aggressive and probably in some cases massive. But I think you're going to find that it's going to be a longer-term, very carefully orchestrated effort on a magnitude that we have not seen before.
Whatever form of military action the U.S. decides to take, the support of neighboring Pakistan will be crucial. Tom Mantier now joins us live from Islamabad for more on how Pakistan is responding to U.S. requests for cooperation. Tom.
Relate that support may be crucial even before military action is needed. Sources close to President Musharraf tell CNN that Pakistan has asked the Taliban to hand over Osama bin Laden within the next 3 days or face a huge military operation. Also, they say that air cover would be used from Pakistan, but no ground troops assigned here. Now, there was a phone conversation last night between the Pakistani president and U.S. President George W. Bush. In that, Pakistan asked for U.S. support in economic areas for Pakistan and possible help with the $30 billion debt that Pakistan currently has. Now, a senior representative will go from Pakistan into Afghanistan to meet with Mullah Omar tomorrow to discuss this latest branch or way out by handing Osama bin Laden over and preventing any possible military action against Pakistan. But the full details yet have not been revealed, but it's the first we've heard of this phone conversation. Also, Pakistan would like the United States to help with Kashmir and the issue there. They would like the U.S. to play a more mediating role in exchange for their cooperation. Pakistan, supposedly, according to our sources, also asked the United States that India and Israel not be involved in the operation. One thing is clear out of these meetings that the president is having, supposedly not to allow any of the land in Pakistan to be used. Now, if it's a helicopter-borne assault, it may present some difficulty because these need a base of operations close by. Where that might be, if it couldn't be on Pakistani soil, would really make it difficult. Now, according to our sources close to the president, Osama bin Laden holds the key to war or no war in this region. So this word going into the Taliban in the next 24 hours to hand over Osama bin Laden or face the huge military operation may be the way out without a military strike. I have just spoken in the last couple of hours to one of the members of the opposition. Imran Khan was a very famous, world-famous cricketer, but now he is a politician, and he says the Pakistani president is faced with some difficult decisions.
The majority of Pakistanis would have liked to have stayed out of this. It's a no-win situation for them because once they get involved, which they have, and if the air bases are used, which there's every possibility now, that means war against Taliban. And war against Taliban means that we have almost a 1,400-mile border with Afghanistan. We have 1 million refugees, Afghan refugees in Pakistan. We have religious groups that have supported the Taliban. And we have an element in Pakistan which will immediately turn against the United States.
That is a concern for many here in Pakistan, what the support for the United States may mean on the ground across this country. There will be meetings at the president's office until late tonight as he takes members of the media, public opinion makers, politicians, and religious leaders into his confidence to try to spell out to them the reasons for the cooperation with the United States in the effort to bring Osama bin Laden out into justice. So if there is a military operation, it will come after possibly a last diplomatic olive branch being sent to the Taliban to turn over Osama bin Laden in the next 3 days, or face some type of huge military operation against the Taliban, against Afghanistan, and against Osama bin Laden. Relitza?
So, Tom, how likely is Pakistan's leadership to gain support after this statement that they have made, support from religious leaders who are very influential, support from those in the military who oppose supporting the United States?
Well, it depends on what is seen as Pakistan getting in return for its level of cooperation with the United States in any possible military action. If the lifting of economic sanctions is part of the package, if debt relief, if help with economic areas, it is something that the government here in Pakistan can sell to the people as a reason for offering assistance to improve the situation for the everyday Pakistani. It is going to be a difficult sell because there are people in this country who definitely not only support the Taliban, but some support Osama bin Laden and what he does. So the difficulty is going to be into presenting his point and bringing the public into his confidence, which we expect him to do publicly, possibly in the next 24 to 48 hours. Right now, the meetings are a consensus gathering operation at the president's office with leaders of opinion.
Tom, what is the likelihood that Afghanistan will hand over Osama bin Laden?
Well, the Taliban has made it quite clear that that is not an option they want to consider or even would consider. So this meeting with the high Pakistani official tomorrow in Kandahar with Mullah Omar is an important one, because this may be one of the last messages that Pakistan is able to make with the Taliban. The lines of communications have been open for the last few days. They apparently will remain open for the next 3 days, with Pakistan sending the ultimatum to the Taliban to turn over Osama bin Laden within 3 days or face a massive military strike.
Tom and Tyr, thank you very much. Jim?
Well, Relitza, we're learning now that Mullah Omar, the Afghan leader, is at this hour calling some of the mullahs, some of the clerics to Kabul in order to devise, if you will, a plan of how they would resist any U.S. attack. Clearly, they have not said that they would release or they would turn over Osama bin Laden to the U.S. or anyone else for that matter. And as David Enser tells us, for the U.S., there's a consideration that Osama bin Laden, his apparatus, simply isn't that visible a target.
An angry and determined president is promising action.
We will find those who did it. We will smoke them out of their holes.
But if Osama bin Laden is the culprit, revenge against him or against his hosts, the Afghan Taliban government, will not be easy. Cruise missiles fired in 1998 missed bin Laden and may only have strengthened his image. Even if bin Laden is killed, many analysts say that would not stop terrorism by his followers.
I would want to destroy as much of bin Laden as possible. I'm simply saying that's like picking a wart off your neck or something. That doesn't do much. That's a very superficial blow against this kind of capability.
To get rid of one man or to launch any kind of revenge attack isn't going to help. Revenge alone is not an answer. There has to be a complete eradication and elimination of all the training camps.
But bombing alone would not likely achieve that. And there are indications those terrorist training camps in Afghanistan are today largely empty. Much of bin Laden's support is across the border in Pakistan, in the area around Peshawar. One reason the promise by Pakistani President Musharraf to help the U.S. against the terrorists could be crucial.
I especially want to thank the President and people of Pakistan for the support that they have offered and their willingness to assist us in whatever might be required in that part of the world as we determine who these perpetrators are.
But can Musharraf convince his military and intelligence services to stop their long and active support for the Taliban?
Pakistan is supplying fuel, funding, infrastructure, training, arms, and administrative help to the Taliban. Without the Pakistani lifeline, the Taliban would not survive.
Senior administration officials warn none of this is going to be easy or quick, and that the United States cannot do it alone. It could, in fact, take years, analysts say, of political, economic, and military effort before Americans can overcome their newfound fear of mass terrorism on U.S. soil.
We're talking about a war, and it's a campaign. And in a campaign, there are going to be a lot of battles. We're going to win some of these battles. We're going to lose some of these battles. There are going to be more civilian casualties on both sides. More Americans will die.
Before it is over, many analysts say it could even require U.S. ground troops in the region. For now, though, the main focus of the Bush team is diplomatic, building a strong international coalition, much as the president's father did before the Gulf War. David Ensor, CNN, Washington.
Well, the Pentagon has named the mission to provide increased domestic defense. Mark Potter joins us now from the Pentagon with more on that. Mark.
Well, Jim, that mission is called Operation Noble Eagle, and we'll have more on that in a moment. But first, according to this morning's Washington Post, Pentagon officials were caught by surprise by the hijacked passenger jet that slammed into the Pentagon Tuesday morning. According to the newspaper, the Federal Aviation Administration told the nation's Military Air Defense Command that a hijacked jet was heading toward Washington. Fighter jets were scrambled from Langley, Virginia, more than 100 miles away. But here at the Pentagon, according to the Post, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld and his top aides were unaware of the impending danger, of course, until the plane hit. And it reports that those in charge of guarding the building also were not warned and did not order an evacuation. An Air Force spokesman this morning would not comment on that report. Now, at the Pentagon crash site, as they have for several days now, workers are still out there 24 hours a day, going through the debris, shoring up the building, looking for more bodies, working under huge floodlights in the nighttime hours. The Arlington County Fire Chief says that the recovery effort could take another 10 days. Building repairs, according to Pentagon officials, could take years. At last report, 88 remains had been recovered. The death toll is 85 remains. The death toll is believed to be 188, including the 64 people who died aboard the plane. Yesterday, families of the victims were allowed to visit the crash site. Now, as for Operation Noble Eagle, that's the Pentagon's new name for its mission to protect the U.S. homeland and to help with the disaster relief effort. It's planning to call up 35,000 reservists, and they will be getting, most of them will be getting notice in the next few days. Hundreds of Coast Guard reservists have already been notified. Among the missions that are covered by Noble Eagle, the fighter air patrols over Washington, D.C. and New York, the warship patrols along the east and west coasts, increased port security, and more assistance for disaster workers. Jim, back to you.
All right, Mark Potter reporting there live from the Pentagon. Let's now turn to Relitza for some more information, some developing news.
Jim, thank you. In international news, we're receiving reports of new developments in the concerning the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Gerald Kessel joins us now from Jerusalem with that. Gerald.
Well, it's a special session, a solidarity session in the Israeli Knesset, the Israeli parliament, a short while ago. And during that solidarity meeting with the United States, Prime Minister Ariel Sharon issued a call to Palestinian Authority President Yasser Arafat to implement an immediate ceasefire in the nearly year of fighting and confrontation between Israel and the Palestinians. Should Mr. Arafat declare such a ceasefire, the Israeli Prime Minister said he pledged that he would order an immediate halt to Israeli-initiated actions against the Palestinians, including the kind of incursions that we saw last night into the main Palestinian town of Ramallah on the West Bank. And should there be 48 hours of quiet, Mr. Sharon went on to say, absolute quiet, he said, then he would instruct his Foreign Minister Shimon Peres to meet with the Palestinian Authority President Yasser Arafat to work out ways to institutionalize that ceasefire, 7 days of quiet, and on to the implementation of the Mitchell report. That the Israeli Prime Minister's challenge, attempting to pressure even further the Palestinian leader. First reaction from a Palestinian spokesman, one of the leading peace negotiators, Saeb Erekat, saying that Mr. Sharon really there should be a meeting right away, and this was an attempt to bypass the need to have a ceasefire implemented right away. Mr. Erekat, Saeb Erekat, the Palestinian negotiator, said the Israeli Prime Minister was simply using the tragedy in Washington and New York as a way of deepening the Israeli attacks on the Palestinians, and the need was to get a ceasefire implemented right away through a meeting right away. And he branded Mr. Sharon with trying to stop such a meeting happening, which was to have been held originally later tonight between Shimon Peres and Yasser Arafat. And also, as part of Mr. Sharon's speech today in the Knesset release, it was a double-barreled pressure on Yasser Arafat, because at the same time that he was saying there needed to be a truce and that he was prepared to allow Mr. Peres to meet with Mr. Arafat to try to consolidate that truce, Mr. Sharon branded the Palestinian leader as a man who had worked with a constellation of terror, and he said it was very dangerous if he would, together with Syria, become part of the evolving U.S. constellation to work against international terror. So double-handed attack by Mr. Sharon, a pressure really on the Palestinian Authority President, but certainly he is saying that if there will be a call for a truce by the Palestinian leader, he would respond in kind and look for 48 hours of quiet before those truce talks could take place. Relitza?
Gerald, thank you. And back to Jim.
All right, Relitza, thanks for that. Those are developments, of course, that could have a major impact on President Bush's plan to form a broad coalition, including Arab Islamic countries, to fight terrorism around the world. Well, from the issues around the world, back to the scene of the rescue recovery efforts that are underway now. New York continues to focus on those operations. Sadly, at the site of Tuesday's attack, there have not been any more people found alive for days now. Almost 5,000 people are still missing. Deep below all of this rubble, it is hoped that there might be someone, perhaps many people, still alive that are trapped there. The rescue workers are doggedly continuing their search. They are refusing to give up any hope. The director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency says there is another factor that's really guiding these workers as well.
It's a crime scene, remember. There must be respect and dignity also paid and cared for those individuals who are still buried in the rubble. There's 600,000 tons of debris in New York City.
For family and friends looking for loved ones, a magnet is the Manhattan Armory, where details of the missing are being registered. Michael Okwu joins us now from there with the latest. Michael?
Jim, you know, it's occurred to me that at times like this, we talk so much about numbers. We in the media have to do that, of course. But I wonder whether we do that partially because it's a reminder of how many individual stories are actually worth telling. 4,900, more than 4,900 people buried under the twisted steel and rubble of the Twin Towers, and tens of thousands of relatives who are connected to them, hanging on to the slimmest hope and trying in some way to find some measure of resolution. And they find that resolution, or they try to find that resolution here at the Armory on Lexington Avenue and 26th Street. some distance away from ground zero, but the emotional ground zero. And basically when they get here, they fill out a 7-page form where they are to give details about their loved ones, including recognizable scars, or everything from their hair color to their eye color to the kind of nail polish that they like to wear. And then ultimately what happens is their loved ones are put on a list of those who have been recovered and are at the hospitals, or those who are officially missing. Since Thursday, 3,100 people have filed through these doors. Yesterday, the New York City Health Department announced that a medical lab company, one of the largest medical lab companies in the United States called LabCorp, is offering free DNA collection, which could ultimately help rescue workers identify the bodies. They are asked, essentially, the relatives are, to provide toothbrushes or hairbrushes or samples of saliva from the closest blood relatives. Any item that might have been used exclusively by the missing. Earlier I spoke to a young woman whose stepsister is missing.
Hope is still there, but it's dwindling fast. I keep hearing reports of bodies found, of, unidentified bodies, and every time I hear that, I say, oh my God, could she be one of those people? And my only thought is right now that I just hope that they find herself, to give us that closure if it gets to that point. I just hope that we can get that closure as a family and move on from there and mourn her together.
There's not much happening right now. There's just a little bit of media here. It is dark in Midtown Manhattan, but throughout the sidewalks here, the walls are awash in posters and pictures of those who are missing, and there are candles that have been laid out by some of the local residents here. In the coming days, you will probably hear the word closure repeated time and time again, but for some of those people connected to those lives underneath the Twin Towers at this point, they will never return to normalcy. Jim.
All right, Michael Okwu there at the scene of the disaster. Relitza.
Jim, in Lower Manhattan, hundreds of residents lined up for a chance to return to their homes, but the visits were brief. Families had time only to grab a few essentials. National Guardsmen escorted them into the blocked-off area and quickly brought them back out. Many of those living in the vicinity of the New York attacks are carrying memories that will haunt them for a lifetime. Brian Palmer has a story of a resident who caught part of the nightmare on film.
This morning I'm standing by the door there and I hear the plane. I look up and I just see this huge explosion.
Film producer Kevin Segala saw the obliteration of a landmark from his terrace with his 1-year-old son Griffin. Segala and his wife Michelle returned to their apartment for the first time.
My life, the moment that plane went into the building, really pretty much stopped. I think everybody's lives have stopped. I don't live here anymore. I haven't been to work again.
This was the view from his terrace that day. This is the view now. The area around Ground Zero covers about 5 square miles and was home to roughly 50,000 people. When the towers collapsed, the familiar rhythm of life stopped in this corner of Manhattan. The West Side Highway, one of the main roads downtown, now the primary route for the massive recovery operation, as well as a staging area for the effort, complete with a mobile animal hospital. On the once bustling street corners of fashionable Tribeca, military checkpoints. 20 miles of high-voltage cable, all installed since Tuesday, snake through the streets of Lower Manhattan. Shuttered stores and a few reminders of the devastation just 7 blocks away. Few shoppers, many curious passers-by and shell-shocked residents, many moving in with family and friends north of the area.
Everyone is so focused on the rescue that all of us in the neighborhood who are displaced, are really secondary. And that's how it should be, except we don't know what to do. So we're hoping to try to organize amongst ourselves.
Every bit of activity out there is geared towards this disaster. And, you walk out there and you can't get it out of your head if you're seeing it every second.
Seeing it every second, living like this for months. Normal life, as it was before, likely years away. Brian Palmer, CNN, New York.
Lisa, there's so many stories, grim stories around there, and it's in times such as these that sometimes small victories provide relief from what has been monumental chaos.
And Bruce Burkhardt relates one, the saga of Rose and Harry.
Another day in the Red Cross shelter in Gramercy Park for Rose Franklin. Another day wondering what happened to her husband, Harry.
I hear a bang.
On Tuesday morning, Election Day in New York, Rose and Harry were working as volunteers at the polling station on Chambers Street, just a few blocks away from the World Trade Center.
I go out and I see all that smoke.
While Harry stayed inside, Rose wandered outside to check out the big boom. She wandered too far. By the time she tried to return, chaos had taken over and she was swept up in the stampede.
Kept pushing everybody up north, up north, up north.
Now confused and wondering where her husband was, the 81-year-old Rose stumbled along for 2.5 miles before winding up at a shelter. It was there that she met a volunteer named Sergio, or as Rose calls him, her angel.
At the beginning, she was one more person there. Slowly you get together and you talk, which is really the only thing you can do.
At first, Rose said she had no family, but after warming up to Sergio, said she had a son in Boston. Though she didn't know his phone number or where he worked, Sergio tracked him down. It paid off. The son reported he had received 2 messages from his father. He said he was alive and well, but the message didn't say where he was.
He's not sure how to talk to an answering machine, and he's probably pretty confused.
He's always been on these heart pills because he had a triple bypass. So I've never known him to be without those pills.
Sergio tried everything, searching shelters, hospitals.
Then I went to the armory, hoping that he would be there looking for her. He wasn't.
So that was to be our story. A couple in their golden anniversary year separated by tragedy. The end. Well, not quite.
We got him.
What?
He left a message on my phone.
The husband did?
Yeah.
Sergio, who just a few minutes before this had left the shelter, came running back to tell Rose the great news. Harry had left a message.
Okay.
Harry, it turns out, had been hunkered down in the couple's apartment in an evacuated zone near the Trade Center. Without electricity, without water, Harry didn't know whether Rose was alive or dead. No one thought to look for him there.
Where's she?
Sergio and Red Cross officials then produced their version of when Harry met Rosie.
I didn't really lose it. Hey, sweetheart, come here.
It was Sergio's notice in the armory that did it when it happened to show up in a local TV news report. A neighbor saw it and told Harry.
I didn't know you where you were, but I would never have gone home. After I met Sergio, we get home.
For Sergio, confirmation of his notion of what volunteering is all about.
We have to concentrate on the small things. Go to a place, and when you find somebody sitting down, sit down by their side like I did and talk to them. And you might be surprised of the information that you can get. And just one person, stick with that person, and with that information, you can make a miracle happen.
Where's Sergio?
Sergio was with me.
Right here.
I saw you. They left the message.
Bruce Burkhardt, CNN, New York.
CNN's coverage of America's new war continues.
We're going to close out this hour with around-the-clock efforts of the workers that are there at the scene of the World Trade Center attack and the supporters that are there cheering them on.